During your speech, you made a lot of references to Jewish people as well as certain people in your audience, not Jewish people in general, but certain people, especially in your audience, to Nazis. Now, that is extremely offensive when certain people are German. And they're also extremely offensive to people who've actually suffered under Nazi rule.
I don't respect that anymore. I really don't. I don't like and I don't respect the crocodile tears the crocodile tears. No. I'm sorry, folks. Allow me to finish and allow me to finish. Listen, sir. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish. Sir, I don't like to play before an audience the Holocaust card. But since now I feel compelled to. My late father was in Auschwitz. My late mother, please shut up. My late father was in Auschwitz. My late mother was in Majdanek concentration camp. Every single member of my family on my father's side,
the Jews did not take arms against the Germans.
My late father was in Auschwitz concentration camp. My late mother was in Majdanek concentration camp. Every single member of my family on both sides was exterminated. Both of my parents were in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And it's precisely and exactly because of the lessons my parents taught me and my two siblings that I will not be silent when Israel commits its crimes against the Palestinians. And I consider nothing more despicable than to use their suffering and their martyrdom to try to justify the torture, the brutalization, the demolition of homes that Israel daily commits against the Palestinians. So I refuse any longer to be intimidated or browbeaten by the tears. If you had any heart in you, you would be crying for the Palestinians, not for what's been done.
We're talking to Professor Alan Dershowitz. He's author of a new book. It's called The Case for Israel, in debate with Norman Finkelstein among his books, The Holocaust Industry and Image and Reality of the Israel-Palestine Conflict.
Now, in 1984, one Joan Peters published a book called From Time Immemorial. The book was universally recognized by serious scholars to be a fraud. Without wanting to toot my own horn, I'm widely recognized as the person who exposed the fraud. I know that book inside out. I read it at least 4 times, and I went through all 1,854 footnotes. I started to read your book, Mr. Dershowitz. I then came to chapter 1, footnotes 10, footnote 11, footnote 12, footnote 13, footnote 14, footnote 15, footnote 16. All of the quotes are from Joan Peters. They are so from Joan Peters that you have a long quote here from Mark Twain on pages 23 to 24. Mm-hmm. I turn to Joan Peters, page 159 to 60. The identical quote from Twain with the ellipses
Is the Twain quote wrong?
With the ellipses,
Is the Twain
let me
quote
finish,
wrong?
sir.
No, but the key
with
is
the ellipses in the same places. The identical quote from Twain with the ellipses in the same places.
It's been widely quoted, as you know.
Really,
now,
Mr. Dershowitz?
What's your point? Is it a correct quote?
Let me finish, Mr. Dershowitz.
I want to ask you a question. Is it an accurate quote of Twain? Let's be very clear. It is not plagiarism to quote Mark Twain correctly.
Except
plagiarism.
If you cite Mark Twain and not Joan Peters. I'm a professor, sir. I know what plagiarism is.
Mr. Finkelstein, in 1948, the UN approved the partition of the State of Israel into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Jordan to the west and Egypt to the south had both previously been created and attacked first upon the creation of the State of Israel. Egypt and Jordan had the opportunity between 1948 and 1967 to create a Palestinian state. Why was there not the same response when the region was under Jordanian and Egyptian control?
You know, I want to just say, young men, I'm not in any way trying to be insulting. I'm way past that. I want to end the conflict, and I want to be reasonable. But it does trouble me, and I want you to think about it. You come here with canned questions. I gave a lecture, you know, I spoke for around an hour, and there was a large amount of material in what I had to say. You don't even listen. You just come in here with a prepared question that has nothing whatsoever to do with what I was speaking about. It's as if I were giving a lecture on particle physics and you were coming here and talking about botany. You don't even listen. You really have to, in my opinion, open your mind and listen. You're not looking at an enemy here. And you shouldn't come in my opinion, you shouldn't come in with these canned questions which Hillel gives you or some other organization to prepare you. Listen and think for yourself. And then I think we can make some progress. Think for yourself, where was I unreasonable? What statement of mine was factually untrue? What did I misrepresent? How did I try to pull the wool over the eyes of the audience? I could sit down here now and speak to you at great length about what happened in 1947 and thereafter. But I didn't provide any background material to give an answer to a question like that. I didn't lecture on the topic. It's absolutely meaningless now for me to answer that question. Most people in the room don't even know what you're referring to. I wonder if I can comment on that.
No, I'm afraid you can't comment on that. I'm sorry, because I've got a question for... I've got to keep this...
Let me just add one point.
Because I'll give you a chance in a minute, Mr. Finkelstein, but I'm going to give you a question to work from, because I want to make sure as many people in the audience feel honored as we can possibly manage. This writer says, the Intifada is not an isolated problem. This problem is affected by 4 wars, terrorism, and the Holocaust. Why is it not relevant, in your opinion, for Israel to be secure?
Well, that nicely brings me back to the former question. I'll answer. And I'll answer both at the same time. I suppose it wasn't missed on anyone in the audience that Mr. Blitzer was deploying that same familiar lawyer's tactic. The question that was put to him was, if we accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, why don't we also accept the legitimacy of a Palestinian state? And then Mr. Blitzer went on to tell us all the good reasons why we should accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, something which, by the way, I concur with. But that still doesn't answer the question. If one does accept the legitimacy of the state of Israel, why doesn't one also accord the same rights to self-determination and statehood to the Palestinians? That was the question, as I understand it, that was put to him. Now, the issue of security was raised, and somebody made I think, inaccurate inference that I'm not concerned with the security of the state of Israel. I am. I'm also concerned about the security of a Palestinian state. Again, we have to apply the same standards across the board. Israel is ranked as the 4th leading military power in the world. Does it have real security claims against the Palestinians? Let me quote to you former Foreign Minister of Israel, Abba Eban. He said, Israel has as much to fear from a Palestinian state as the Soviet Union does from Luxembourg. How many people here feel the Soviet Union has a real threat from Luxembourg? Furthermore, if we apply the logic of Abba Eban, the Soviet Union had more rights to occupy Afghanistan than Israel does to occupy the West Bank and Gaza, because certainly Afghanistan poses a greater security threat to the Soviet Union than Luxembourg. How many people here support the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan? Now let's look at what Amos Oz says in his most recent book, The Slopes of Lebanon. He asks to me, even though I am no great admirer of Amos Oz, he asks to me a reasonable question. What does Israel, the fourth-ranking military power in the world, have to fear from a state that would be 1/5 the size of Albania and 1/2 the population of Kuwait? Is that a real threat to the state of Israel, or is that simply an excuse to continue the occupation? Israel faces as much of a military threat from the Palestinian state as the United States did from Grenada. Now, surely Ronald Reagan, or perhaps Ronald Reagan, believed that Grenada posed a major security threat to the United States, exactly as George Bush 2 weeks ago again affirmed that Nicaragua poses a major national security threat to the United States. Nicaragua, which has to its credit 2 escalators and 1 elevator, poses a national security threat to the United States. It seems to me, applying the same standards as Abba Eban uses and Amos Oz uses, we have to dismiss this totally spurious notion that Israel is maintaining its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza for security reasons. It has very good reasons to maintain the occupation, but I'm afraid to say they have precious little to do with security.
You make the point that's 10 years ago, and I appreciate that, but you know, it's only recently you said of Israel, it's a crazy country, it's like a junkie. Every few years they go to war, they need their fix, they're lunatics. American Jews don't want to defend that.
Yeah, Israel is carrying on in a lunatic fashion. I would like to ask you...
And Hezbollah, who you went to meet?
I would like to ask you, name me another country in the world. 2003, Israel was the cheerleaders for the war in Iraq. 2006, it went into war in Lebanon. 2008, 2009, it attacked Gaza. Now it talks about attacking Iran. If you read the Israeli papers every day, they talk about, should we attack Gaza? Should we attack Lebanon? Should we attack Syria? Name me another country in the world that falls into that category.
Well,
that's a lunatic state.
Israel would point to a number of its neighbors and say exactly the same thing.
No, you show me how many countries has Iran planned to attack? No, let's ask a simple question. How many countries in the last 10 years has Iran attacked?
When you look...
No, that's a fair question. How many countries in the last 10 years has Iran attacked?
When you look at the history of Israel, do you not have some sympathy or understanding, people would ask, as to why they feel threatened and why
we're not talking
they
about why they feel threatened. We're talking about a country that every 2 or 3 years goes to war. And if you follow the press as I do, every day they talk about let's attack this country, let's attack that country. That's not normal. And when I call it a lunatic state...
So why is it that the Israeli people vote in this government that you say is responsible for that?
I think it's a regrettable fact. I don't say these things with glee. I'm not happy about that fact. As the American economist, the Nobel laureate Paul Krugman, put it in the New York Times last week, he said it's perfectly obvious Israel's headed towards national suicide. It's become a crazy state. I've never been in a crowd like this. They're nuts.
Please, whoever keeps